from Perth, Australia, with Joe Siracusa. He is a professor of security and diplomacy at Curtin University. Good to have you with us. So what did you take from this one and only vice presidential debate of this campaign?
Good afternoon, Hazam. Well, look, I thought it was very interesting at a number of levels. You're correct to point out on that first question, Governor Walz ducked the question about what they were going to do, what happens to Israel and Iran. And of course, Senator Vance said he will defer to Israel. So he didn't get much out of that. Look, in terms of style and substance, I think in terms of style, it sort of reintroduces a kind of civility into American political life. You know, they weren't screaming at each other, and they weren't casting aspersions or anything like that. They were trying to be just politicians, the kind of thing that I've seen in the past in my long political observations. You know, they were just trying to be ordinary politicians. On the other hand, in terms of style, they both had a very difficult position. And that is, they weren't defending themselves. They were defending the people they are running with. So Senator Vance is trying to defend Donald Trump, who's not in the room, and Governor Walz is trying to defend Vice President Harris, who's not in the room. And so, you know, and both of them seemed a little bit adrift in terms of trying to defend these people properly. You know, both these gentlemen are a heartbeat away from the presidency. I think in terms of intelligence, emotional IQ, I think Senator Vance ran all over Governor Walz, who struck me as, I hate to say this, Hazem, but he looked a little bit in over his head. You know, I wouldn't have had him down as vice presidential material just on this one performance, because he wasn't in control of the material. He didn't seem to have a lot of range. I mean, he told us he was a fourth grade teacher who liked to go pheasant hunting on the way home from football practice. I mean, that's not much of a vice president or a potential president. Sort of scared me a little bit. But I think on the day that Senator Vance and the Republicans did very well, I think Walz did as well as he could. I don't think he can do any better. And I could see why the Democratic Party has kept him in the basement. You know, they don't want to send him out there too much ahead of time. But we have 5 weeks to the election. Most vice presidential debates are not important, but this one might be, because we're running out of time and the election is very close.
On the civility issue that you talked about there, how this was you know, generally a very civil atmosphere. That was one of the things that I noticed about it as well. I didn't see the whole thing because, I mean, as you know, we've got a huge story in this region of the world to cover. So I was able to catch bits of it. But the impression I got was it was a much more substantive and civil debate than what we saw from the presidential candidates a few weeks ago. Did that surprise you, given the general level of discourse that we've had in this U.S. election campaign?
Well, in a way, it surprised me, because civil discourse isn't the kind of, the civility isn't the kind of thing we see much anymore in America. On the other hand, they're both professional politicians. You know, whatever their IQ is, whatever their education, they understand that their life is dedicated to public service and public legislature and that kind of thing. And so, you know, they both speak the same kind of language. And, you know, I did watch the whole hour and a half. They were sort of very polite to each other. They conceded each other's points, and they kept talking about something that I haven't heard now in about 4 years. They were talking about the potential for compromise, for common goals. They could see that they have similar problems, but very different ways of reaching it. And so, you know, they acted like they were on the same planet, which is something we haven't got the last 7 years. I mean, the last 7 years, you wouldn't know where these people are coming from. But I think it was very reassuring to Americans to see two gentlemen trying to be gentlemen in terms of talking about politics and what could be accomplished. And they made it very clear. The economy needs help. But what bothered me a lot was that neither one of them said much about the Middle East, didn't say much about Gaza or the burgeoning war in Lebanon or the potential war with Iran. You know, this is the major issue of the day. And neither one of them had a word of apology for what's happened to the Palestinians in terms of the number of people who are dying. I mean, there is a catastrophe in your neck of the woods, and they acted like it didn't exist. You know, we got 6 million Lebanese, 1 million of whom are looking for a meal and a place to stay tonight. And we got these terrible humanitarian problems, and they're not paying attention to any of this because they're trying to score political points in terms of home ownership and that kind of thing.
We're going to have to leave it there. You're certainly not the only person in this part of the world who got that impression of it. Appreciate your thoughts on this. Joe Siracusa, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you, Hudson.